Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Usman Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your presence and association. As we continue Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 13, verses 14 to 28, Dhritarashtra quotes home. Om Jnanatimivandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmei Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Paripriya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sarva Shastra Piyusha, Sarva Vedeka Satpala, Sarva Siddhantaratnadya, Sarva Loka Tripada, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidvando Didaditya, Shri Krishna Parivarshita, O Srimad Bhagavatam, nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent chancellor fruit of all the Vedas. You are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions. O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees. O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varsha Shirarite Sarvada Sarvase Vyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading one attains transcendental bliss, for your syllables bring pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone for your incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Matsangi Manguru Man Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madadan Mustute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisance to you. Asadu Sadhu Tadahi Nattini Chochataraka Hanamun Chakada Chinmam Premna Hritkati Ospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintly to the unsaintly, O uplifted very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest Mahatma Tod. Accompany pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmadyasya Yatanvayaditarata Chartesva Vignaswara, Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya, Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yattati Sargom Risham. Damna Svena Sadani Restapuakam Satyam Param Dhimaihi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O pervading person out of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance to you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the cause, or primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existing, transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanal Paisha Sapya Kalapa Asmin Yugejanam Manda Simanda Manda Bhagyo Padrata. All in one in this iron age of Kali, many but short lives are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all always disturbed. Narayana Maskritya Narachevam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaimudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obedience unto the person of God, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the foremost human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai Pumso Parodharmo Yatha Bhaktira Dokchaja Ahitaka Parapyata Yayatma Suprasiditi. The supreme occupation dharma of all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated, uninterrupted, completely satisfied self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatya Savairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahaitakam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of God as Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Vadanti tat tadvidas tatvam yat gnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan it is abhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shri Shosha Dadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ryadantastoya Bhadrani Vidunati Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire from material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees who have developed the urge to hear his messages, which in themselves virtues are properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prayashu Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatumata Slok Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtiki. By regular attendance in the class in the Bhagavatam and by rending of service to the pure devotees, all that is troubles in the heart is almost completely destroyed. Loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder of Charity International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna. So let us cover any questions, feedback that you had from the last session. If there are any questions, because we did not have sufficient time to address any of the questions, I will cover Mother Lesha's questions as well. So let us first address those questions. So the first question, I think we touched on it a little. Through Srimad Bhagavatam, we know that interplanetary space travel is possible. Is time travel not possible in the material world, being insurmountable as Srimad Bhagavatam indicates? So time travel meaning one can go back in time or go in the future. And there are instances in the Bhagavatam which is not really related to, a lot of people quote it as time travel. From my limited understanding, I don't see it as time travel. So for example, when King Indradumna went to see Lord Brahma, when he went to see Lord Brahma, many yugas had passed, while he was still, waiting for Lord Brahma to get Lord Brahma's audience. In Lord Brahma's planet, he was living in the present. On Earth planet, it was the future. So it seems like time passed. Did time pass? Didn't time pass? Now that is simply due to the fact that time is relative to the location that one is in. Different dimensions, different planetary systems are influenced by different times. So, for example, we live for 100 years, living entities live for 100 years. Insects also live for 100 years, but their 100 years may be one night for a human being. They are born in the evening, die in the morning. So time is relative in that sense. And depending on which dimension you may go from one dimension to another, if you advance enough to travel to different dimensions, you may be influenced by time. But going back in time and going in the same dimension, going back in time and going into the future of time, that I have not personally, read. Krishna has inconceivable energies, and if Krishna wants it, anything is possible. But I have not, read anything in terms of people traveling in the future. They can perceive the future, so they can see the future, and therefore great exalted personalities are three-color gyan. They can see past, present, and future. So the fact that they can see past, present, and future, technically you could say that they could live in those past, present, and future time frames. But individuals traveling, scientists traveling, that may be beyond their purview or beyond their control, right? So from my limited perspective, it may not be there. Are all demigods Avesh incarnations of Krishna? When Vidura left this post as Yamaraj to play a part in Krishna Leela, then was he aware of his previous Yamaraj post that he stepped away for 100 years? Now, just in relation to, there may be devotees that are more experienced and have read and may know answers. So if you know answers to some of these questions, also don't hesitate to share. In relation to knowing, like Vidura knowing his position as Yamaraj, if Krishna desires, yes. If for the pastime and for that Leela, Krishna, the Yogamaya is Yogamaya and Krishna's desires that he does not know, then he will not know. So you will find even in Krishna Leela, sometimes there are personalities that are reminded of their past, and in most cases not. So they're living according to how Krishna wants them to know. So if Vidura, and in this case, Vidura may or may not have known about his past. Right? It depends on, and because we don't know everything about every single moment that Vidura lived through, there may be instances where Krishna reveals to him, and there may be situations where you just don't know. Right? So it all depends, again, on what Krishna desires. And Mother Lesh also said that today's purpose was such a powerful, blatant avalanche of compassion and mercy. What we see as the great material calamity is in reality the greatest mercy, if only we can see the truth and take it to heart. Thanks, Prabhu, for the very eye, ear, mind, and heart-opening messages. Full sensory for sure. Hare Krishna. All right, Hemavati says, cruel death cares for no one. We're all going to experience death, therefore we have to be prepared. We have no excuse. To die blissfully, one has to be prepared. Yep, that is a reality. And individually, we need to prepare ourselves and always keep that in mind. All right, so Galaxy Prabhu, maybe you should rename so we can know your wonderful name. Thank you for the weekly nectar. Yamaraj asked Maharaj Yudhishthir, what is the most wonderful thing in this world? Yes, hundreds and thousands of living entities meet death at every moment, but a foolish living being nonetheless thinks himself deathless and does not prepare. This is the most wonderful thing. Amazing instruction, Vidura, and purpose from Srila Prabhupada remind us we are all Dhritarashtras. Yes. So death, the reality of death, the perception of death, those who are advanced, they understand that. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada says that those who are Krishna conscious, they live their life like they're going to die at any moment. Because then they're living very conscientiously. They're living and understanding that if I to die now, what would be relevant and what would be irrelevant? And that's how I should live every moment of my time. Okay, and we should always contemplate. If I'm really, if I'm going to die in the next 5 minutes, Krishna comes and says, "Okay, your notice is given. You got 5 minutes." Are you now going to, okay, you got 5 minutes. Naturally, you're going to focus on that which is important and relevant for your future destination if you are intelligent. So we should ask ourselves, what am I going to do if I got 5 minutes? And in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to die. What will I actually be doing in those 5 minutes? And those things which I do in those 5 minutes, if I'm serious about my Krishna consciousness, I should endeavor to increase that at every moment. Nalini Kante Prabhu says, material happiness is illusion and temporary, like a child with a new toy gets attached to the toy, but the toy is temporary and the source of its suffering. Platform of spiritual life, our pleasure is from devotional service. Wonderful. Thank you very much for your feedback. Let us proceed to today's verses. So today, now we heard how Vidura has returned on the place from places of pilgrimage, also meeting Maitreya Muni, and now he came back due to a compassionate heart to help Dhritarashtra. And last week we heard his cutting instructions, advice. He did his share in presenting the truth to Dhritarashtra, and then left it to Dhritarashtra to now decide. So now we're going to hear what did Dhritarashtra do after receiving that advice. And here we also see, and how is this relevant, is that Vidura's instructions were cutting. He wasn't speaking, like politely, trying not to disturb Dhritarashtra. He's elderly, so speaking, with that tone. No. He made it very, very clear, cut through, making it very clear to Dhritarashtra that you are like a dog. You're living like a dog of Bhima. You are old, you are attached, you are Kripana. So naturally, those are very harsh words, but sometimes the pure devotee has to do that to cut through the thick layer of ignorance. So we may also be preached to in this way, and how we receive it depends on our maturity of Krishna consciousness. When Indra was cursed to become a hog, and after his sentence of that hog life, then Lord Brahma came and said, okay, Indra, time is up, let's go home. Have any planets? And Indra in the body of the hog was thinking, no, I'm okay here. I'm happy here. I got my nice, beautiful wife, my small, cute little children. Just see, so happy here. And Lord Brahma was thinking, just see, this is the power of Maya. This is the power of illusion. That even the King of Heavens can be covered to such a degree that he's, happy even in a pig's body. Now, if that can happen to Indra, who are, we that Maya cannot influence. So we have to be very wary of Maya and cautious of Maya. Prabhupada warned us, Maya is no ordinary energy. She's Krishna's own energy. And to cross beyond the boundaries of Maya is impossible. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes it very clear that in etam tarantite, that you can only cross Maya when you surrender to Krishna. Otherwise, she's insurmountable. Maya metam tarantite, she's insurmountable. So we have to surrender, we have to appreciate that, yes, this is what I need to do. And when you have that right goal, intention, objective, then when we get proper direction, whether it's chili sauce or whether it's sweet sauce, it doesn't matter. If it's beneficial for my progress, I embrace it. Leave the chili sauce, leave the sweet sauce, and take the instruction and apply it, because it is for our benefit. So Dhritarashtra finally got the instruction that Vidura wanted to give. And now we're going to hear what happened. 29. Evam Raja Vidure Nanujena Pragna Chakshur Bodhita Ajamidam Chitvas Sweshu Sneha Pashan Dradim no Nishchakrama Britar Sandarishta Sitadvam. Thus, Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the scion of the family of Ajamida, firmly convinced by introspective knowledge, prajna, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus, he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation as directed by his younger brother Vidura. So very, very wonderful, Prabhupada's writing. Firstly, he was firmly convinced. Now, how did he convince himself? It wasn't like Vidura spoke to him, now he's convinced. Okay, now thank you very much, I'm going. No, the word Prabhupada's using here is introspective knowledge, prajna chakshu. You have shastra chakshu, so you're seeing through the eye of scripture, and prajna chakshu, seeing through introspection. So he heard and he started to become introspective on what he heard. He thought about it, he contemplated it, which is very, very important for us. We have to contemplate on the instructions we receive. The more we contemplate on the instructions, the deeper it goes into our subconscious. If we just hear something and don't contemplate, it can leave the other side. Or it can just stay within our conscious memory and then leave. We are exposed to many things, but that which we contemplate on, we think about regularly, pondering from different perspectives, different angles. What did he say? Why did he say that? And then trying to analyze, trying to think about it more deeply, then it starts to settle within our consciousness, and that becomes the driving force. So that introspective exercise, introspective knowledge, prajna chakshu, that convinced Dhritarashtra. And once he was convinced, see, you will not act if you are not convinced. People act, and most people act not necessarily because of what they are convinced in their conscious mind. They act due to what they are conscious. They act due to what they're convinced on the subconscious level, which may have been building up over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. So you may hear something, but act in a different way. Why? Because of what you have been building over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. So therefore, hearing and contemplating on Krishna conscious topics is very, very important. And that will then direct us to appropriate action. So immediately he left and broke all the family attachments by his resolute determination. So he was convinced. He was convinced due to resolute, he had resolute determination, and he was convinced because of introspective action or activity due to Vidura's purity and preaching. Thus, he immediately left home and set out where? On the path of liberation. So naturally, he was inspired. He was happy that I'm leaving. He was so attached to these things. He left it for something more glorious, which is the path of liberation. Prabhupada's purport. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great preacher of the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam, has stressed the importance of association with sadhus, pure devotees of the Lord. He said that even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can achieve all perfection. We are not ashamed to admit that this fact was experienced in our practical life. Were we not favored by His divine grace, Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, by our first meeting for a few minutes only, it would have been impossible for us to accept this mighty task of transcribing Srimad Bhagavatam in English. And here Prabhupada is giving this purport while he is in Vrindavan, in India, when he's translating Srimad Bhagavatam, and he has not even ventured to the West to spread Krishna consciousness. And yet Prabhupada is making the point that by this few minutes of association with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he was able to come to this point. What to talk about what Prabhupada would be doing after this. Without seeing him at that opportune moment, we could not have become a very great business. We could have become a very great business magnate, but never would we have been able to walk on the path of liberation and be engaged in the factual service of the Lord under the instructions of His divine grace. And here is another practical example of the action of Vidura's association with Dhritarashtra. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was tightly bound in a network of material affinities related to politics, economy, and family attachment. And he did everything in his power to achieve so-called success in his planned projects. But he was frustrated from the beginning to the end so far as his material activities were concerned. That is the test. That is the test. We may think, I know best, and therefore I may engage in activities in all different fields, thinking I know what's best, and therefore I'm doing it. But the test will be, are you frustrated? Or are you blissfully inspired? If you are frustrated, it's a clear sign you have ventured on the wrong path. So we should be aware of our actions, of our activities, and evaluate. Is it leading me more and more to frustration, or is it inspiring me more and more? Am I feeling more and more blissful? Am I feeling more and more inspirational, excited about devotional service, about my life? We always have these two choices. We have the material path and we have the spiritual path. And both paths exist in the material realm. See, in the spiritual world, there are no two tracks. In the spiritual world, there is only one track, and that is the track of pure devotional service. Anything short of pure devotional service exists in the material world, not in the spiritual world. In the material world, there are two tracks, there are dualities. And we have the choice, the complete freedom to decide, do I want to follow the path of frustration, or do I want to follow the path of Anandamburi Vardhana? We have that choice. Even though we may be influenced by our past, by our upbringing, by our parents and society and community and media and our own mind and senses and peers and our education and schooling system. Even though we may be influenced by all these areas, it is still our own responsibility we are still responsible. Why? Because all these environments will present to us the different options, but ultimately we still have our own intelligence. We still have the power to discriminate. And with that power of discrimination, we need to understand and decipher what path. So Dhritarashtra, because of the circumstances and his own desires, he had placed himself in the dark well of attachment and frustration. And by the mercy of Vidura, the sadhu, the pure devotee of the Lord, he was rescued. So we should, yes, understand that influence is there in different ways, but our past does not dictate the future. It's our activities in the present that can change the future. So whatever may have happened, we cannot do anything about. But we always and will always have the choice in the current time to decide what the future will hold. Therefore, if, like Dhritarashtra, we can always make the appropriate decision at that point, right? The past is the past, let it go, and now move forward into the future. And yet, despite his life of failure, he achieved the greatest of all success in self-realization by forceful instruction of a pure devotee of the Lord, who is the typical emblem of a sadhu. The scriptures enjoin, therefore, that one should associate with sadhus only, rejecting all other kinds of association, and by doing so, one will have ample opportunity to hear the sadhus, who can cut to pieces the bonds of illusory affection in the material world. It is a fact that the material world is a great illusion, because everything appears to be a tangible reality, but at the next moment evaporates like the dashing foam of the sea or a cloud in the sky. A cloud in the sky undoubtedly appears to be a reality because it rains. And due to rain, so many temporary green things appear. But in the ultimate issue, everything disappears, namely the cloud, the rain, and the green vegetation, all in due course. But the sky remains, and the varieties of sky or luminaries also remain forever. Similarly, the absolute truth, which is compared to the sky, remains eternally, and the temporary cloud-like illusion comes and goes away. Foolish living beings are attracted by the temporary cloud, but intelligent men are more concerned with the eternal sky, with all its variegatedness. So very, very wonderful example Prabhupada's giving. We have to understand the material nature is temporary. And all its composition, every aspect of the material world, starting with your senses, the material body, your relationships, everything we accumulate, our assets, everything in the material nature has the exact nature that it's temporary. And the fact that I am eternal as a spiritual being means it is incompatible. Even in Bhagavad Gita, in the introduction, Prabhupada makes it very, very clear that we are influenced by the incompatible nature of material world, and therefore anxiety will be there. So we need to understand that I have a material side, but that material side is temporary. I am an eternal spiritual being, and that is my eternal reality. That is my eternal identity. So I want to still take advantage of my material body, because I am in the material vehicle, and I need to use my material vehicle, but for reviving my eternal identity, not for taking me further away from my eternal identity. Therefore, again, I use this very clearly as a direction. I use Prabhupada's instructions clearly as a direction. Am I becoming attached to the rain, to the clouds, to the green vegetables, as I'm living my life? Because if I am becoming attached to these aspects of material nature, like that child's toy, I'm going to suffer. Guaranteed. I'm going to be frustrated. Guaranteed. No one in the existence of time has become perfectly blissful in the material world. Even the greatest demons have been destroyed, have been frustrated. Or it's like building a sandcastle. One is building a sandcastle, and it's only a question of time before that sandcastle is destroyed. So we need to understand that we have a bad bargain. We're in the material world. We have material senses, material body, etc. Take proper advantage, make best use of the bad bargain. And how do I make best use of the bad bargain? By using the facility given to us by the mercy of the Lord to revive my eternal relationship with Krishna. I need to transcend. I need to transfer myself to that reality and to that environment. That is what Krishna conscious is about. So by the mercy of Vidura, Dhritarashtra got this. And he was on his way. He started his journey on the right direction. By the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we have realized this to some degree. Now the question is, are we evaluating what else am I attached to that's keeping me, the anchor? What other anchors do I still have that's keeping me in the material world and not allowing me to transcend? I need to work on those anchors. I need to pray to Krishna to remove those anchors. And most important, I should not increase those anchors, because then I am moving in the wrong direction. I may be Krishna conscious, or I may be aspiring to be Krishna conscious. So I take 3 steps forward because I'm excited and I'm practicing Krishna consciousness, I'm chanting Hare Krishna, I'm doing devotional service. I take 3 steps forward. And then I increase my attachments and take 4 steps back. I give leeway to my attachments and take 5 steps back. Then I take another 3 steps forward and 5 steps back. I'm not going anywhere. And I could keep doing that. That is why one of the offenses to the holy name, to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. See, I could be practicing Krishna consciousness for 50 years. I could be having the association. I could be engaging in deity worship. I could be doing service. I could have, I could be chanting for 50 years. Yet, I am not progressing. Why? Because I am maintaining material attachments. Note, it is not the material attachments maintaining you. It is you who are maintaining material attachments. And who knows that you are maintaining material attachments? It is you, it is Srila Prabhupada, and it is Krishna. And ultimately, if you know that you are maintaining material attachments, then it is your responsibility to do something about those. Otherwise, those material attachments will totally destroy your spiritual life. At least if it doesn't take you away, it's a blessing. But if you are maintaining material attachments, then that is an offense to the holy name. And because you are offending the holy name, you will not survive in the spiritual environment. You will be derailed on the track of spiritual life. So we should be very, very careful. It is not an offense to identify one's material attachments, recognize one's material attachments, acknowledge one's material attachments, and work on it to reduce it, to destroy it, through the process of devotional service, through the mercy of Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita. That's not an offense. It's an offense to maintain it. So therefore, we should be very careful. 30. Pratim prayantam subalasya putri pativrata chanu jagama sadvi himalayam nyasta danda praharsham manaswinam ivasat samprahara. The gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of the king of Sabala, of Kandara or Gandhara, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delights of those who have accepted the staff of the renounced order, like fighters who have accepted a good lashing from the enemy. So Prabhupada is going to share that Gandhari also followed her husband, and she realized that he's going to the Himalayan mountains. So she also was very, very happy to follow. Purport. Sobalini or Gandhari, the daughter of King Subala and the wife of King Dashrath, was ideal as a wife devoted to her husband. The Vedic civilization especially prepares chaste and devoted wives, of whom Gandhari is one amongst many mentioned in history. Lakshmi Ji, Sita Devi, was also a daughter of a great king, but she followed her husband, Lord Ramachandra, into the forest. Similarly, as a woman, Gandhari could have remained at home or at her father's house, because as a chaste and gentle lady, she followed her husband. But as a chaste and gentle lady, she followed her husband without consideration. Instructions for the renounced order of life were imparted to Dhritarashtra by Vidura, and Gandhari was by the side of her husband. But he did not ask her to follow him, because he was at that time fully determined, like a great warrior who faces all kinds of dangers in the battlefield. He was no longer attracted to so-called wife or relatives, and he decided to start alone. But as a chaste lady, Gandhari decided to follow her husband till the last moment. Maharaj Dhritarashtra accepted the order of Vanaprastha, and at this stage, the wife is allowed to remain as a voluntary servitor. But in the sannyas stage, no wife can stay with her former husband. A sannyasi is considered to be a dead man civilly, and therefore the wife becomes a civil widow without connection with her former husband. Maharaj Dhritarashtra did not deny his faithful wife, but she followed her husband at her own risk. So when Vidura preached to Dhritarashtra, he did not preach to Gandhari that she also has to do the same. But she also heard the instructions. Now, she could have gone home and be supported by her family. But she, as a chaste wife, decided to follow her husband. Now, when she made that decision, Dhritarashtra was, according to the Vedic system at that time, and according to what is ascribed, he was going to take sannyas. He was going to renounce completely, which means that he's breaking all familial ties and now renouncing to take the next step onto the path, onto the path in relation with Krishna. Gandhari, on the other hand, she is thinking, well, I should still be chaste and I should follow my husband. But Prabhupada's making very clear, at her own risk. What does that mean? That means she's making the decision that, yes, I'm going to follow my husband. He's going to follow Vidura's instructions to become perfect. I am also going to follow him to become perfect, but at my own risk. That means Gandhari is not following Dhritarashtra with the intention that he still has to protect her in a forest or in the Himalayan mountains. No. In the palace, Dhritarashtra would do whatever to protect Gandhari. But on this journey, Dhritarashtra was alone and Gandhari was alone. She was still going to go serve him, but with no expectation in return. That means whatever challenges she's going to face on this journey, she was going to face it on her own, accepting that I made the decision and I don't expect anything from my husband. It's a journey that I have decided to take on myself at my risk. Sannyasi accepts a rod as a sign of the renounced order of life. There are two types of sannyasis. Those who follow the Mayavadi philosophy headed by Sripad Sankaracharya accept only one rod, Ekadanda. But those who follow the Vaishnavite philosophy accept the three combined rods, Tridanda. The Mayavadi sannyasis are Ekadandi Swamis, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are known as Tridandi Swamis, or more distinctly, Tridandi Goswami, in order to distinguish from the Mayavadi philosophers. The Ekadandi Swamis are mostly fond of the Himalayas, but the Vaishnava sannyasis are fond of Vrindavan and Puri. Vaishnava sannyasis are Naratamas, whereas the Mayavadi sannyasis are Dhiras. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was advised to follow the Dhiras because at that stage it was difficult for him to become a Narottam. Now this is also very, very instructive. Do not follow a path higher than your realization, even though the higher path is recommended and preferable. Dhritarashtra did not follow the path of a Narottam because why? It was difficult for him to become a Narottam. So, no problem. There is, if one cannot achieve a higher level of spiritual life, does not mean that one cannot journey on a spiritual path. One should understand where one is and not artificially put oneself on a pedestal, on a position where one is not. If one artificially puts oneself on a pedestal, one will fall in due course of time. That is already a fallen action. So subtly you're already fallen. It's only a question of time where you grossly fall. So understand where one is, understand one's shortcomings, what level one is, and then from there, take the next step. That is more solid, that is more sustainable, that is more long-term. We are not running a race. Let's see who can go sooner to the spiritual world, me or you. Spiritual life is not a race. It's not a, we're not challenging each other. It's not a competition. Who knocks first on the spiritual door? It's not a competition. Spiritual life is about you and Krishna. Not about others and Krishna. It's about you and Krishna. It's about your relationship. Where are you in that relationship? And once we know that, once we're honest with ourselves in this is where I am, now from there I can move forward, even with 101 faults. Because Krishna is not concerned about your 101 faults on that journey, as long as you are on that proper path to reviving that relationship. That 101 faults is insignificant. But if you put yourself on a higher level than you are, now you are trying to cover those 101 faults, even though you have those 101 faults. And that itself will never allow you to overcome those 101 faults. Because why? I don't have them. I'm a Narottam. I'm a great Vaishnava. I'm a pure devotee. I'm better than you. And you can maintain that artificial level of advancement, lifetime over lifetime over lifetime over lifetime, or Krishna will teach you that you'll crack through that imaginative pedestal and you'll fall. And the higher you try to imagine yourself to be, the harder you'll fall. Nobody can cheat Krishna. Krishna knows you in and out. So having shortcomings, having anarthas, having material desires, having faults is not a disqualification to follow the path of Krishna consciousness. It's understanding where I am, what I need to practice, what I need to embrace at that point to take the next step. And if I am nicely situated, Dhritarashtra didn't say, oh man, I should be a Narottam and not a Dhira. That's like a, now I'm going to tell people, okay, I'm going to become a Dhira. That's like saying, that's not good on my title. I want to be a Narottam. No. He could appreciate and understand, this is where I am. And from there, I will perfect my life as a perfect Dhira. And then from there, however the Lord wants to take me forward, the Lord will make arrangements and take me forward. Because I'm not in control. I cannot gate crash into the spiritual world. I cannot go on my own. There is no entrance. There is no power that allows me on my own to go back to the spiritual world. It is dependent on the mercy of Hari, Guru, Vaishnava, Bhagavad Gita. It is dependent on these factors. When you get their mercy, you can go. So therefore, all I need to do is understand where I am and then seek their blessings through the practice of Krishna consciousness and allow the process to work, allow the mercy to purify. And eventually, we'll get there. Whether it's 1 life, 100 lives, 1 billion lives. As long as I am on the right destination, or I'm moving in the right destination, on the right road, with the right focus, right intention, right mindset, the rest is irrelevant. Krishna can make those billion lifetimes go in a flash of a single lifetime. It all depends on my sincerity. And here Dhritarashtra was sincere. He realized his mistake. He acknowledged, and he acknowledged it through his actions. And we'll hear how he perfected his life as well. So Gandhari decided, yes, I also don't want to be deprived of this. What Vidura said was wise. I also want to follow. And she also followed. And generally, in the Varnashram system, in Vanaprastha or in Grihastha ashram, wherever the husband goes, a chaste wife gets the same reward. But in sannyas, there is the segregation. In sannyas, the wife does not follow the husband. As Prabhupada says, the sannyasi means that is considered civilly dead. Doesn't exist. It's late now. But Gandhari followed her husband due to a chastity at her own risk, knowing that it's my life, I'm on my own, I will accept whatever difficulties come, but I will also follow in the same footsteps of Dhritarashtra. 31. Ajata Shatru Kritametro Hutang Nir Vipran Natvatilago Bhumirukme Griham Pravishto Guruvanda Naya Nachapasyat Pitaro Sobalim Char Maj Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice to the sun god and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncle and or aunt, the daughter of King Subala. I just remembered one more point in relation to the verse. Just going back to the previous verse, this analogy. Dhritarashtra and Mother Gandhari were happy to go to the Himalayas. And the analogy that's used, that who becomes happy to go to the Himalayas, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of renounced order, like the fighters who have accepted a good lashing from an enemy. So a good fighter, when he gets lashed by the enemy, some wounds, and he comes back home, he's proud about the lashes, the scars of a good Kshatriya. They feel proud, they feel happy. So when they have a good battle, they're happy, they're excited. This is a real Kshatriya. So those who are serious about the renounced order, those who are serious about renouncing the world, they go to the Himalayas. And naturally, Himalayas will provide the bare necessities to maintain body and soul and focus on the ultimate goal. So that is why people become excited. For us, we should be excited that we are practicing Krishna consciousness. It's the greatest blessing. And we should be excited to embrace what is favorable and reject those things unfavorable. We should be excited. If we are as convinced as a warrior or a renunciate. When a warrior gets a lashing, he's excited, he's happy, he's delighted. When the sannyasi experiences austerity in the Himalayas, he's excited, he's happy, he's delighted. as a Krishna conscious practitioner, when we become purified of our attachments, we should become excited, delighted, happy. Text 31, translation again. Mahayudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, Ajata Shatru, beautiful name of Yudhishthira Maharaj, performed his daily morning duties by praying, offering fire sacrifice to the sun god, and offering obeisances, grains, cows, land, and gold to the Brahmanas. He then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderlies. However, he could not find his uncle or aunt, the daughter of King Subala. So a few points. One is Yudhishthira is named Ajatasattu, whose enemy was never born. Yudhishthira does not have any enemies. Therefore, his name is Ajatasattu, whose enemy was never born. But somebody said, but hold on, he had so many enemies. Duryodhana was one. So why is Yudhishthira Maharaj called Ajatasattu? Because it seems like he's got an enemy. Yudhishthira and Duryodhana. Duryodhana is his enemy. So how can the Bhagavatam say Ajatasattu? How can Sukadev Goswami and Sudha Goswami, Srila Vyasada, how can they make this point? How can they give this name to Yudhishthira Maharaj? Because Yudhishthira Maharaj was not, from his perspective, seeing Duryodhana as enemy. Duryodhana sees him as an enemy, but he never saw an enemy. So from his perspective, his vision, his perspective is Ajatasattu. I don't have any enemies. An enemy is never born. This was the consciousness of Yudhishthira Maharaj. Very elevated level of consciousness. Then the second point is he had a daily schedule. So let's hear Prabhupada's purport and then we'll speak around that. Mahayudhishthira was the most pious king because he personally practiced daily the pious duties for the householders. The householders are required to rise early in the morning. And after bathing, they should offer respects to the deities at home by prayers, by offering fuel in the sacred fire, by giving the Brahmanas in charity land, cows, grains, and gold, etc. And at last offering to the elderly members due respects and obeisances. One who is not prepared to practice injunctions prescribed in the Shastras cannot be a good man simply by book knowledge. Modern householders are practiced to different modes of life, namely to rise late and then take bed tea without any sort of cleanliness and without any purificatory practices as mentioned above. The household, the children are taken to practice what the parents practice, and therefore the whole generation glides towards hell. Nothing good can be expected from them unless they associate with sadhus. Like Dhritarashtra, the materialistic persons may take lessons from a sadhu like Vidura and thus be cleansed of the effects of modern life. Mahayudhishthira, however, could not find in the palace his two uncles, namely Dhritarashtra and Vidura, along with Gandhari, the daughter of King Subala. He was anxious to see them and therefore asked Sanjay, the private secretary of Dhritarashtra. So very, very important point Srila Prabhupada is making, according to the example of Yudhishthira Maharaj, that he had a morning practice. And Prabhupada mercifully has given us the morning practice. Therefore, the morning program, having Mangalarti, is very, very important for those who are serious about spiritual practice. Now, If you're staying near the temple, then having a morning program at the temple is most ideal, where the deities are. If you can't go daily and you're not staying near the temple, then weekends is good, because the environment is conducive. Or one can have a morning program at home. But a morning program is key. And here we are hearing Yudhishthir, even as a king, had his morning duties. This is very, very important. Rising early, performing these different activities. This is extremely essential for spiritual practice. Now, we find even the materialists, if you ask any successful person in the material world, if the morning hour is most beneficial, they will say yes. It's one of their practices to rise early. You will also find that successful people will have certain daily morning practice that they do every day for their success. So the material success is also dependent on rising early and performing specific success steps, they may call it, like reciting affirmations, etc. Their goal journals and whatever they may have. As spiritual practitioners, we have the same. We also have the act of rising early. We also have affirmations that we recite daily in the forms of Guru Vastikam, in the song of praying to Tulsi Maharani, Lord Nrsimhadev, chanting Hare Krishna. This morning practice of that Srila Prabhupada gave us is very, very conducive and effective for spiritual growth. Now, we may adapt that according to time, place, according to our own individual circumstance and the time we have available, but it is crucial and important that we have a program, a daily spiritual program that we practice. Because this, before we start our normal day, this morning program shields us. It protects us throughout the day. So that we, examples given is like having a bulletproof shield, bulletproof chest, vest. And when I have a bulletproof vest, if I go into the environment during the day and I get shot by all the negative association that is there due to my occupation, due to the environment, the bullets will make holes, or rather the bullets will dent the bulletproof vest. And before it breaks or penetrates through, I'm back home and I reshield myself again. So the morning program and the evening program is really there to shield ourselves like a bulletproof vest, so that I can go during the day into the material environment due to my material circumstances and be protected and shielded. If one leaves into the material environment without a morning program, one will be battered and bullet, practically shot. There'll be holes and one will kill oneself. That means spiritually, it's spiritual suicide. So therefore, a morning program, daily practice is very, very important. And it's a good practice to become attached to this. I was fortunate to stay in the temple for many years. And staying in the temple for many years, one has to have a morning program. Prabhupada instituted it. There's no question about it. And from the first day that I joined the temple, I loved the morning program. And that's where one gets spiritual strength from. So we need to develop an attachment to the program that Srila Prabhupada has put in place, because that's where we get strength. And we need strength to survive the onslaught on this path of perfection. 32. Tatra sanjayanam ashinam praprachod vignamanasa gaval gane kwanas tato vriddho hinas chanetrayo. Yudhishthir, full of anxiety, turned to Sanjay, who was sitting there, and said, "Oh Sanjay, where is our uncle who is old and blind?" So consider, Yudhishthir was a Jatashatru. He did not have enemies. Even though Dhritarashtra as the king had placed them in so many difficulties, he didn't come in the morning and say, "Oh, where are they? Oh, thank God they're gone. Gee, hallelujah, they're gone. It's time they went. Now I'm free." No. He did not see Dhritarashtra as an enemy. And here we can see he was in anxiety. He's old, he's blind. Where is he? It's my duty to protect him. Even after all that had happened, still Yudhishthir was dutiful. And therefore, because Dhritarashtra wasn't there, he was in full anxiety. 33. Ambacha hata putrartha pitra vyagata surit apimaya krita pragne hatta bandhu sa paryaya asam samana samalam gangayam dukito patat. Where is my well-wisher, Uncle Vidura, and Mother Gandhari, who is very affectionate, who is very afflicted due to her son's demise, all her son's demise? My uncle Dhritarashtra was also very mortified due to the death of all his sons and grandsons. Undoubtedly, I am very ungrateful. Did he therefore take my offense very seriously and, along with his wife, drown himself in the Ganges? Yudhishthir Maharaj is now thinking that they have left because of him. He's seeing it as his fault. So we are getting a glimpse of a scenario, a situation that's transpiring, right? We know what's happening because we are hearing the Bhagavatam. So we already know Vidura preached to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra and Gandhari decided to leave. So we know the scene, the reality. Yudhishthir does not know what's happening. So we are now getting a glimpse of the proper mentality that we need to progress in spiritual life. And what is that mentality? Let us read Prabhupada's purport. The Pandavas, especially Yudhishthir and Arjuna, anticipated the after effects of the Battle of Kurukshetra, and therefore Arjuna declined to execute the fighting. The fight was executed by the will of the Lord, but the effects of the family aggrievement, as they had thought of it before, had come to be true. Yudhishthir was always conscious of the great plight of his uncle Dhritarashtra and Aunt Gandhari, and therefore he took all possible care of them in their old age and aggrieved conditions. When therefore he could not find his uncle and aunt in the palace, naturally his doubts arose, and he conjectured that they had gone down to the water of the Ganges. he thought himself ungrateful because when the Pandavas were fatherless, Dhritarashtra had given them all royal facilities to live, and in return, he had killed all Dhritarashtra's sons in the battle of Kurukshetra. As a pious man, Yudhishthira took into account all his unavoidable misdeeds, and he never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle and company. I'm going to read that line again. As a pious man, Yudhishthira took into account all his unavoidable misdeeds, and he never thought of the misdeeds of his uncle and company. That means what was done to him in terms of misdeeds, he did not take that into consideration. What his consciousness is that according to how he's responding to the situation and how he's perceiving it, is that because they have left, it's due to his being ungrateful. He did not look after them carefully. So he's seeing it as his misdeed. So this is how his consciousness is. Dhritarashtra had suffered the effects of his own misdeeds by the will of the Lord. So that's the reality, right? As you sow, so shall you reap. But Yudhishthira Maharaj was thinking only of his own unavoidable misdeeds. But Yudhishthira Maharaj is thinking that I'm the cause. I was the cause of the battle of Kurukshetra. I was the cause of all the Kauravas, being killed. I'm the cause that Dhritarashtra and Gandhari has left. That is the nature of a good man and a devotee of the Lord. So here we are now getting a glimpse of the psyche of a pure devotee and a good man. So even a good person should have this type of mentality. What to talk about? And a devotee of the Lord. And what is that? Prabhupada then concludes, a devotee never finds fault with others, but tries to find his own and thus rectify them as far as possible. This should be the sutra that we should live by. A devotee never finds faults with others, but tries to find his own and rectify them as far as possible. That does not mean there is no faults. That does not mean that I should have a blind eye to faults. What it does say is that work on yours first, then the rest. And if you work on your first, and when there is no faults in you, that level of consciousness will be a blessing to the world. So, fault finding is also a dangerous obstacle that can distract one's focus. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says every endeavor is tainted with some fault. Every endeavor. There will be faults. There is absolutely no perfection in the material world. It's perfectly created so that there's faults. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of material energy. So, if that is the nature, we are now trying to apply a process, trying to practice spiritual life, trying to go back to the spiritual world. It's not going to come freely or easily. There's going to be challenges. And one of the challenges is, how do I manage the shortcomings, the faults, the transgressions, the deviations of the environment, of the people around me, of the society, of spiritual leaders, of the institution? How do I deal with that? And individually, depending on where we are, we need to understand and work with this instruction. A devotee never finds faults with others, but tries to find his own and thus rectify them as far as possible. You will find that within our society, in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, there are many shortcomings. There are many transgressions or deviations from Srila Prabhupada's instructions. Some minor, some major. Firstly, we should at least be thoughtful and understand which ones will impact my spiritual life. So if I don't see a fault and just take everything as the absolute, I may embrace something that is a fault, thinking it's perfect, and that takes me to a dead end. I'll give you a more graphical example. So after Srila Prabhupada left this world, and there were the zonal acharya guru system that was there. One such guru mentioned that my disciples only need to follow 3 regulative principles and not 4. Now, if you were not thoughtful, if you have not read Srila Prabhupada's instructions and you did not understand what Prabhupada gave as the instruction, and you just naively, narrow-mindedly accepted your guru, because the guru is absolute and the guru is the Supreme Lord, etc. The statements are there, which unfortunately may be used very loosely. One may think, oh yes, only 3 principles. Why? Because Guru Maharaj said so. But someone may say, no, Prabhu, you mustn't see fault. No, one should appreciate, understand that this is a deviation. And now instead of accepting that fault, right, one should understand, hold on, I need to follow 4 regular principles and not 3. Because if I did accept 3, thinking that my guru is correct, then that becomes a deviation on this path, and I will never make it back to the spiritual world. So one has to have the power of discrimination. At the same time, that power of discrimination is there for me to identify what do I apply and what don't I apply on my path, on my journey, in my devotional service to perfect my relationship with Krishna. I am not here to rectify your faults. I'm not here to rectify the faults of others. I'm not here to rectify the faults of the leaders in the society or the institution itself or whoever. I'm here to rectify my faults. So that way I can have a proper mind of discrimination, to not embrace others' faults, to add to my faults, which I still need to work on, and understand what's beneficial and what's not beneficial, so that I can try to reduce all the impurities and the faults in my own personality. There's a statement in the Bible that says, take the log out of your eyes before you take the splinter out of others. So everyone is on this journey. And depending on where you are on this journey, what is your responsibility, what is your duty, you may have to do what is required. The most important lesson is understanding the proper mentality that we need to cultivate. Accepting instructions coming from pure souls like Vidura, whether they are given with chili sauce or sweet sauce, that is beneficial for our progress in spiritual life, understanding our goal and objective, and be delighted that my goal is to revive my eternal relationship with Krishna, to revive my pure love of Krishna, nothing more, nothing less. That's the goal, that's the objective, not getting deviated from that, and embracing everything that will take me there. Whether it's painful in applying because I'm of my attachments, if that is the goal and I'm convinced, then I will do whatever it takes. No obstacle will be an obstacle if one is convinced of the goal. And with the blessings of the Lord, as Prabhupada would say, Krishna wants us to come back to the spiritual more than we desire. So we have Krishna's back. We have Krishna's mercy. Srila Prabhupada wants to take us back home. So the compassionate nature of the Vaishnavas in our line, in the cyclic succession, is there. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come. Patita Pavan Hetu Tav Avatar. He's come to give us the mercy to those who are fallen. So we have the blessings, we have the mercy, we have the instructions. Now it's upon us to embrace it, to accept it, and to move in the right direction. And if we have certain faults, do not put it under the carpet. Because if you keep putting the faults under the carpet's slowly going to reveal it. You cannot hide. 34. Pitaryo parata pando sarvana suridan shishun arak satam vyasan sanatam pitro yo gatav ita. When my father Pandu fell down and we were all small children, these two uncles gave us protection from all kinds of calamities. They were always our good well-wishers. Alas, where have they gone from here? Sutta Uvacha Kripaya Sneha Vaiklavyat Suto Viraha Karshita Atmeshwaram Achankshano na pratyayati pidita. Sutta Goswami said, because of compassion and mental agitation, Sanjaya, not having seen his own master Dhritarashtra, was aggrieved and could not properly reply to Maharaj Yudhishthira. Sanjay was the personal assistant of Maharaj Dhritarashtra for a very long time, and thus he had the opportunity to study the life of Dhritarashtra. And when he saw at last that Dhritarashtra had left home without his knowledge, his sorrows had no bound. He was fully compassionate toward Dhritarashtra because in the game of the battle of Kurukshetra, King Dhritarashtra had lost everything, men and money, and at last the king and queen had to leave home in utter frustration. He studied the situation in his own way because he did not know the inner vision of Dhritarashtra has been awakened by Vidura, and that therefore he had left home in enthusiastic cheerfulness for a better life after departure from the dark well of home. Unless one is convinced of a better life after renunciation of the present life, one cannot stick to the renounced order of life simply by artificial dress or staying out of the home. So now we are getting a little more, another side now. So we heard it from Yudhishthira. Now we are hearing it from Sanjay's perspective. So Sanjaya was the servant, was the secretary of Dhritarashtra. Every single instruction that Sanjay received, he faithfully followed, carried out. Dhritarashtra could not do anything without Sanjay. Sanjay was practically assisting in so many facets of Dhritarashtra's life and was completely faithful. Now, and everything that Dhritarashtra had done, Sanjay was part of that. Now Sanjay is thinking, that was practically part of Dhritarashtra's life in every facet. And here's one instruction or one event where I don't know what happened. And he's thinking that it's maybe my fault. I must have done something wrong. So he's feeling sorrowful from his perspective. He's not seeing the other side where Vidura preached to Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra, as Prabhupada says, enthusiastic cheerfulness. He left home in enthusiastic cheerfulness. Dhritarashtra was excited. Dhritarashtra was blissful. He was enthusiastic. He was happy to practice spiritual life and go on this journey, because he could evaluate this is better life after departure from a dark well of home. So we also need to see the path of Krishna consciousness. Are we convinced that it is a better life? Because if you are fully convinced, then you will also be enthusiastic, cheerful. You'll be excited, you'll be blissful, you'll be happy, you'll be on cloud nine, as they say. You'll be embracing every opportunity of spiritual practice to take the next step in great excitement and cheerfulness. If not, means that conviction is not there. Therefore, Prabhupada says, unless one is convinced of a better life after renunciation of the present, one cannot stick. So conviction means you'll stay on the path. Therefore, Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who leaves. Be surprised who stays. Because those who stay are convinced. Those who leave were not convinced. No matter what the reason may be. You could leave one temple, but never leave the process of Krishna consciousness. You could leave an association of some devotees, but never leave the process of devotional service. Like never give up the chanting of Hare Krishna, no matter what. Because things happen in this world, for good or bad. That's the nature of the duality of the material world. But never leave the auspicious path of Krishna consciousness. If you are convinced of Krishna consciousness compared to material consciousness, you're convinced of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, what he came to give. You're convinced of what Srila Prabhupada sacrificed for, his life for. So we should be convinced. And once you are convinced, you can stick on the path. And nothing will disturb you, nothing will distract you, nothing will deter you. In fact, any negative event will only increase your determination, your conviction, your enthusiasm to go faster and more with greater determination. Because you are seeing nothing but the reality of the material nature. And Prabhupada says one cannot stick to the renounced order of life simply by artificial dress or staying out. That means there is no artificial practice of spiritual life. You cannot pretend. You can't put a show. Because you're putting a show for what? Show to who? You may fool those around you, but you can't fool Yamaraj. You can't fool Krishna. And if you want to go back to the spiritual world, well, they're the ones that's going to dictate. You can't fool Srila Prabhupada. So we have to be honest, sincere, convinced, understand the process, embrace it, and blissfully, with great enthusiasm, apply. And if we really know what the outcome is, we will be grateful again and again and again to Srila Prabhupada. 36. Vimshrij yashrun panibhyam vishtabhyat manam atmana ajata shatru pratyuche prabhopadav anusmaran. Firstly, he slowly pacified his mind by intelligence, wiping away his tears and thinking of the feet of his master, Dhritarashtra. He began to reply to Maj Yudhishthira. Sanjay Vacha Naham Veda. Let me just. We may also be put in the same situation as Sanjay. We get to know of a circumstance, situation that causes us sorrow, pain. It'll be there. It's part of the material world, part of the nature of the material existence. Put a pause button. Firstly, he slowly pacified his mind by intelligence. Engage your intelligence. If you cannot engage your intelligence, open Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports and read anyway. Just open it. Take a book, just open it. It says Krishna reveals, just open it and read. It'll give you solace. It'll give you guidance. Think of the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. Think of the lotus feet of Krishna, Lord Chaitanya. Srimati Radhavani. It'll give you solace. It'll give you guidance. It'll give you shelter. And in this way, you can overcome any traumatic, difficult situation. Not by material adjustment, but by spiritual empowerment, by spiritual blessings. We want to use spiritual potency to overcome any form of negativity. 37. Sanjo vacha naham veda vyavasitam pitrorva kula nandana kandarya vamahabaho mushitosmi mahatmabi. Sanjay said, my dear descendant of the Kuru dynasty, I have no information of the determination of your two uncles, in Gandhari. O king, I have been cheated by those great souls. Purport. That great souls cheat others may be astonishing to know, but it is a fact that great souls cheat others for a great cause. It is said that Lord Krishna also advised Yudhishthira to tell a lie before Dronacharya. It was also for a great cause. The Lord wanted it, and therefore it was a great cause. So first lesson we are learning from this purport. How do I define a great cause? People say, yes, this is a great cause, this is a great cause. We want to do things for great causes. So what is a great cause? Here's a great cause. What the Lord wants. So anything that the Lord wants is a great cause. Does the Lord want you to be Krishna conscious? Yes, that's a great cause. Does the Lord want you to spread Krishna consciousness? Yes, that's a great cause. Does the Lord want you to please Srila Prabhupada? Yes, that's a great cause. So now we know what is a great cause. The Lord wanted it, and therefore it was a great cause. Satisfaction of the Lord is the criterion of one who is bona fide and the highest perfection of life is to satisfy the Lord by one's occupational duty. I'm going to read that beautiful sentence again. Satisfaction of the Lord is the criterion of one who is bona fide. That means you will get those who are bona fide and those who are not. In the guise of devotees, leaders, gurus, sannyasis, people, you will find that. But how can you discriminate and know that which is bona fide and that which is not? Those who are bona fide, those who are not. Satisfaction of the Lord is the criteria. Are they satisfying Krishna? If they are satisfying Krishna, then that is the criteria. Then that is bona fide. And the highest perfection of life is to satisfy the Lord by one's occupational duty. So if you want to know what is the highest perfection that one can achieve in your occupation, are you satisfying the Lord through your occupation? If you are taking your occupation and dovetailing that in the service of Krishna and satisfying Krishna, that is the highest perfection. You don't need to do anything else. That will take you to higher and higher heights of perfection. That is the verdict of the Gita and the Bhagavatam. Dhritarashtra and Vidura, followed by Gandhari, did not disclose their determination to Sanjay, although he was constantly with Dhritarashtra as his personal assistant. Sanjay never thought that Dhritarashtra could perform any act without consulting him. But Dhritarashtra's going away from home was so confidential that it could not be disclosed even to Sanjay. Why? Because Vidura told Dhritarashtra, just leave, don't tell anyone, because if you tell anyone, they'll, don't, it's a slur, you old, you blind, don't, they'll give you excuses, one after another. Sanatana Goswami was cheated by the keeper of the prison house while going away to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And similarly, Raghunath Das Goswami also cheated his priests and left home for good to satisfy the Lord. To satisfy the Lord, anything is good, for it is in relation with the absolute truth. We also had the same opportunity to cheat the family members and leave home to engage in the service of Srimad Bhagavatam. Such cheating was necessary for a great cause, and there is no loss for any party in such transcendental fraud. Fraud. Transcendental fraud. It exists. Well, if there's fraud here, there's fraud there. Your fraud is for your personal sense gratification. Their fraud is there for Krishna's pleasure. So we have to appreciate satisfaction of Krishna. You can use that. Whatever I do, is it satisfying Krishna? Is it pleasing Srila Prabhupada? If it is, embrace it. If it's not, readjust, redirect, reanalyze, reevaluate. That way, we will not have any obstacles on this path. Or rather, let me rephrase, we will be able to overcome every obstacle on this path to full shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Kwantarat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much for everyone's time. Are there any questions or comments anyone has? You're most welcome to unmute as well. Shama, thank you very much. for your kind appreciation. Right, Shamananda Prabhu says, thank you for the different points and reminders, and also for sharing some info on some of the challenges we are facing within the society and how to continue going forward. As you mentioned, Srila Prabhupada said, we have to make best use of the bad bargain and do the needful. Amazing how eager Gandhari was to take advantage of Vidura's instructions, so not only her husband can attain perfection, but also, but she could as well. Also wonderful to see that even though Dhritarashtra led such a troubled life, causing lots of anxiety and pain for so many, by Vidura's grace, he was able to become perfect at the end. Yes, that's a very, very important realization. It's really not how you begin the race or how you run the race, but really how you end the race. And that's so true in terms of spiritual life. Yes, it is not that we condone suffering to others, but it is unfortunately the nature of the material world and nature of people that if they're not sincere, if they have ulterior motives, if they have agendas, that they'll cause pain to others. So causing pain is absolutely, there is no excuse for causing pain. At the same time, the factor of mercy is there. And I also, in relation to your point that you made, I also look at it, how does Srila Prabhupada see everyone? And just like there was Siddha Swarup, he left Srila Prabhupada. And one disciple of Srila Prabhupada didn't like Siddha Swarup. And even though he left Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada never left him. Prabhupada still had him dearly in his heart. And Prabhupada said that Siddha Swarup will go back to Godhead, and so will this disciple. So in this way, we find that even those who cause difficulty, those who cause trouble, we may see them in one light. The society may see them in another light, and Prabhupada may see them in a different light. Krishna may see them in a different light. So it's not a simple black and white solution. But one thing is very clear. Prabhupada makes it again and again. He makes this point. No one and nothing can stop your spiritual journey besides you. So therefore, developing the right mentality and mindset and approach is very, very important. Very, very important. Another example, we see Srila Prabhupada himself was experiencing the destruction of his own Guru Maharaj's society right in front of his eyes. Srila Bhaktisarana Maharaj has warned Srila Prabhupada that there will be fire in the mouth. And when Srila Bhaktisarana Maharaj left this world, there was fire in the mouth. His own advanced, inverted commas, and no doubt they were advanced, sannyasis, disciples, were fighting for marble. And the beautiful preaching mission, 64 temples that Srila Bhaktisarana Maharaj had started with so many preaching endeavors, the printing presses, the ships, steamships with dioramas that he had established, started to dwindle and die, destroy. And Prabhupada was amidst that inferno. And the lesson is, Prabhupada did not go in to teach the lessons. Oh, you should not do this. Why did you people do it? No. He simply continued on the order of his spiritual master. to preach Krishna consciousness. So we can learn from Srila Prabhupada's own life how he managed the turmoils, the issues that transpired. In fact, there was another lesson that comes to mind. Srila Prabhupada warned his disciples to not associate with one of his god brothers. And there were different reasons for that. Because this god brothers were very critical of Srila Prabhupada. And then this god brother left this world. And when they came to Srila Prabhupada was warning the disciples, don't see it as a negative thing, because he went back to the spiritual world. And the disciples were wondering, wow, how's that possible? It's like he was criticizing Srila Prabhupada, but he went back to the spiritual world. So certain dynamics we have no purview of. So therefore we should understand that how Krishna deals with each individual. I mean, look at all the demons. Look at Putana. Putana didn't do anything devotional. She came to kill Krishna, and yet Krishna delivered her. This is Krishna. So how Krishna deals with each individual, that's his sweet will. We want to stay focused and always do what's best for ourselves and for others. Then Shamana Prabhu says, shows how impactful and mighty the association instructions of pure devotee like Vidura and Srila Prabhupada are to be able to move someone in such a way. Yes, and Prabhupada has that purity. Prabhupada has that ability. For those who are sincere, Prabhupada's instructions will move their heart, no doubt. We see so many examples of that throughout the planet. Amavati Radhika says, thank you very much for the powerful class. So wonderful. We just want to hear more. Can't believe class is already finished. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mother Amavati Radhika. Jagannath Prabhu says, Hare Krishna. But thank you for today's most transcendental class. I have to leave due to load shedding in a few minutes. Yes. Thank you, Jagannath Charan Priya Prabhu. Mother Lash, Hare Krishna. Thanks for Krishna Katha. I like the comments that spiritual life is not a race. This process itself needs to be enjoyed. The journey also needs to be viewed as the greatest mercy, and the process of journey needs to be enjoyed and intensified, because it's a representation of the action, thinking, wanting, loving. We want eventually to achieve, but on a transcendental, illegible level. Thank you. Yes, nicely put. It is a wonderful journey, and we should enjoy the process. Because on this path, there is no loss or diminution. How wonderful. I mean, so from so many angles, so from so many perspectives, it's the greatest blessing, the greatest glory, the most exciting thing that could happen to us. And even with the challenges, a warrior wants to go and have a fight, and he wants to fight with somebody that's powerful, that's strong, not just somebody who's weak. He likes the challenge. If he's a warrior, good warrior. So on this path of Krishna consciousness also, there will be challenges. And if we have the proper attitude and mindset of handling the challenges, then it just becomes more exciting, more blissful, because the end result becomes more relishable when the challenges are there. Prabhupada went through so many challenges, and the end result was just more blissful. So we are hearing from Vidura, from Sanjay, from Yudhishthir Maharaj, the proper mindset. And Prabhupada, see how beautifully he's revealing these gems in his purports. He's giving different historical events, putting the scenario, putting the situation, and then putting his gems in the purport. We need to be able to extract the gems and embed it into our core of our hearts. Make a necklace of these beautiful gems and embrace them, wear them every day and live by them. And in this way, our life will be nothing short of glory. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol.